All right, Chapter 6 is a very important topic for us. This is a critical part of the entrepreneurship journey because your business plan is one of the most important things you do to communicate to others what you're up to, and that usually gets into financing discussions, as well as to share with folks who are on your team what you're doing and how you're planning to do it. It's a good exercise for all entrepreneurs to go through, but then it tends to become an important one for some of these other reasons. Pretty straightforward week this week, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. So let's start tackling our subject. So let's first address the idea of the plan. The concept of the business plan is not necessarily the place where you want to show your creativity or make your mark with something unique. Business plans tend to be fairly simple, consistent, rather conventional, and they tend to have a certain outline or table of contents, if you will, and we're going to go through that in the chapter. One of the things that it's important to remember is not all plans are the same, and so some will have a few different elements than others, and they may be done a little bit differently within the different sections. It's just that the general outline, the general topic of a list of topics, if you will, are fairly consistent, and you'll see this in the chapter that we'll go through that. I'm going to highlight some of those things for you. I'm not going to go through all of them in our intro here because it's just not really feasible. But basically, there's a set format. You tend to follow that format, and you tend to make it your own in how you put your elements in, not necessarily how you reshape the structure of the plan. So continuing on with this, the business plan also is usually somewhere around 20 to 30 pages in length. Some are shorter, and those tend to be places where they're not going to be viewed as or scrutinized as much by an external audience. Some can be longer, and that may be because your concept is pretty challenging for an uninitiated person to understand, or because maybe the funding requirements are there. But there are different ways to shape the plan. It's good to get someone that's experienced with this. We have a small business center at the college, and we do a lot of business plans. I've written several in my lifetime. But the idea is to customize the plan for what you are using it for. So let's talk a little bit about some of those different plan types. So here's just an example of a couple different types of plans. If you had just a summary of a plan, just a concept that you wanted to run by some people or to share with some people that would be important screeners, if you will, you could do something that's 10 or 15 pages long and just hit the highlights. Don't go into a lot of depth. It's more to test the waters, if you will. A more in-depth business plan is what we were talking about on the previous slide. Somewhere around 20 to 30 pages. This says 25 to 35. I feel comfortable with that as well. It's really not a hard and fast rule. And then an operational plan, and this can be quite in-depth, and this goes into a lot of details, and a lot of times this is when you're really exploring things. I once saw the operating plan for the DeLorean car company back when it was getting started, and it was every bit of 100 pages long and very detailed about how the plant was going to be laid out and what they were going to be doing to make the cars. But again, there's different purposes, and it's good done. If you haven't had experience with this, get a professional, somebody that spends some time with these types of plans, and get their input to help customize your plan. So another point I want to make is brought out in this slide, and that's realizing that even though you may have written something early on, during your process of developing your concept, you may find that things are going to change. It's okay, and that's not unusual. It's not a bad thing, even if you've shown it to some people early on in the process. As you develop the ideas and things really become more clear to you, or things have changed because of other information that you've gathered, it's okay to modify the plan. Just make sure that all the folks who were relative important viewers of it are brought up to speed on the changes. So that's pretty much my highlights for you for the chapter. This is basically what they will cover. There's more slides. They're up on the top of the Moodle shell, and there's some great material in the text. One of the reasons why I picked this textbook is because of the in-depth nature of the way they've presented it, and this chapter does a good job of also showing you the different elements and explaining what's in a business plan. I wish we had more time for that. I wish we actually had you in a classroom. This is probably my favorite part of the entrepreneur experience, is trying to flush out the idea. It's exciting, it's fun, and this is where you really start to see the rubber meet the road, at least theoretically. The other piece of actually making it happen is obviously the real thrill. So enjoy the chapter. I hope this YouTube video works out okay for everybody, and I'll talk to you in about a week.